like to welcome everybody to the Coaches in the Mouth pod. This is Coach Jeff Williams along with Coach Bray Cook in the Mouth, Brent Bender. We've got a huge guest we're bringing on here, a man that has over 317 high school wins, 9 state championships, was also 2018 National Coach of the Year, in the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, soon to quickly be in the Arkansas Coaches Hall of Fame. Coach Rick Jones, who is with Mizzou Tigers right now, legendary high school coach in Oklahoma. And Coach, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. It's a pleasure to be here. I've listened to it many, many times, and I'm happy to be on it.
Well, we're excited about having you. Let's get into your career, and then we're going to get into all kinds of things.
Okay,
so
cool.
If you're a football coach or a football fan, you need to sit down and listen to, because we're going to get in the insides, the ins and outs, all kinds of different scenarios and things that you've gone through in your career. Coach, let's get into it. You're born in Texas,
Denver City, Texas.
Yep. And Denver City, Texas. You kind of moved around.
Mustangs.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Moved around a little bit in Oklahoma. Your brother's coach. You're the oldest of 4.
Yeah.
And you ended up in Ardmore, Oklahoma, where you graduated. Kind of talk to us a little bit about growing up there and moving around and that part. And then you've talked about a guy with your first football coach, and let's get into him a little bit, how he influenced a little bit. But let's talk about your childhood, growing up, and your high school years, and we'll get on to Harding.
Great. Like you say, I was born in Denver City, Texas. When my dad got out of World War II, he was there at Okinawa and spent some time there at Okinawa. Then after the war, he went back to West Texas. He grew up in Oklahoma, but he went back to West Texas and eventually bought a truck, what they call a mud truck, oil field mud truck, and that's what he was doing when he met my mom. And that was there in Denver City, Texas, and we ended up moving a lot. We moved to Hennepin, Oklahoma, which is thriving. It's sort of a suburb of Davis. And Dad at that time was a rancher. We were ranching, farming, doing that. And then he was a car salesman, insurance salesman, investment consultant. We had a Mexican import business at one time. It makes it sound like he was sort of itinerant, but Dad got out of the Army, and he told people that he would never work for anybody the rest of his life. He did not like taking orders. He liked being his own boss, and Dad never had a salary. From the time he got out of World War II until the day he passed, he didn't work for another man. He was very independent, and that meant we moved around a lot. So I was always a new guy, and we moved from I was born in Denver City, and then I probably can't keep up with all of them. We moved so often that in the 2nd grade, they took me to my grandparents' house in Denver City, Texas, and said, hey, why don't you keep him for a while, and we're trying to figure this thing out. And so I actually lived with my grandparents for a while, and we eventually moved to Duncan in the 3rd grade, stayed there through the 9th grade. I was a Duncan Demon and Will Rogers Eagle, and that's where I met Coach Prestige, who you mentioned. And then when I was a sophomore, we moved to Ardmore, which is sort of a rival of Duncan.
Yeah.
They're about 45 miles away. And I think, if anything, it's like I'm used to being the new guy. I'm used to being, the new guy. I went to Harding to play football because Oklahoma and Oklahoma State and Tulsa obviously could not evaluate talent properly. And so to show them, I walked on at Harding. It was such a great deal. Coach Proctor, legendary coach at Harding. I thought I was going to Southeastern maybe and get a scholarship, or East Central there at Ada or there in Durant, and that didn't happen. And so I said, well, I'm just going to go to Harding. I'm going to walk on to Harding. So I called Coach Proctor up, and I said, Coach Proctor, this is Rick Jones. I just want you to know I'm planning on walking on at Harding. And he said, hey, that is great. That is awesome. We're happy to have you. He said, what did you say your name was? And I sort of slumped down and said, Rick Jones, Ardmore, Oklahoma. He said, okay. So they were, obviously I was high on their priority list of guys that they needed to get, but it was the best thing that ever happened. I loved Harding, and I loved going there. But in the 2nd grade, we lived in the part of Duncan that the elementary school was Mark Twain Elementary, and I saw the team practicing, the Pee-wees practicing. And my brother and I, he was a 2nd grader at the time, and I was a 3rd grader. We had full equipment. We were ready to roll. And so we put our stuff on and just walked down to the practice field and said, "Coach, we're ready." And he said, "Well, how old are you?" I said, "3rd grade and 2nd grade." He said, "Oh, you can't do it. You got to be 4th grade." And so we dejectedly walked back home. We were probably on bicycles. We got on a bicycle in full gear and go back. So then we move across town to where we were going to Will Rogers Elementary. And I was 3rd grade. My brother was 2nd at that time. So we would have been 2nd first, I guess, when I went to Mark Twain. But we figured out they practice over by the TG&Y store, a sort of forerunner of Walmart to a certain extent. And we got on our bikes, got our gear on, and we drove to the vacant lot there by the TG&Y. And I went up to the guy that appeared to be the head coach and said, "Coach, we're here to play." And he said, "Okay, let's go." And he didn't care that we were 3rd grade and 2nd grade, and we had to beat a 4th grader actually to play. But in those days, you didn't need a physical, you didn't need anything. We had gear, you're good to go. And that guy, I've told him, and I've told his son Ty Prestige, has coached forever in the state of Oklahoma. But Coach Prestige is probably the reason that we've been a football coach this whole time, because he was such a powerful influence on my life. He was so awesome. He would yell and scream and jump up and down and grab you by the jersey, and he'd hug your neck. Just, he was the perfect coach. And I've thought about that so often because I love football so much to this day, years and years and years later. And I thought, if I would have had one of these mini Lombardi guys, I don't know what would have happened. But I told Ty, his son, I said, "I blame your dad for every bit of this. It's just because he was such a powerful influence on my life." And I remember those days I remember more of that than I probably do high school football, to tell you the truth, because we had great teams. He was very competitive, and he liked to win, and it was a wonderful experience. And before he knew it, he said I was the worst mistake he ever made, because before he knew it, the other 3rd and 2nd graders found out, and they all got their gear on. And they went up there too. So he had to babysit about
Expanding the roster.
1st and 2nd grade. He's expanding the roster, but the rules weren't quite the same as they were back then. And but that's sort of the deal. Went to Harding as a walk-on, and lifelong friends. People talk about brotherhood all the time. It's a cheap word in this day and age, but that is exactly what it was. And to be honest, it's even more so now with the job that Paul is. Ronnie Huckabee sort of set it up, had it on, obviously going the right direction, and then Paul
y'all
came
were teammates.
in.
So
we were roommates actually.
Yeah.
We were roommates. I tell you what, that Ronnie was not very appreciative guy, because my mom Mom and Dad drove me up to Harding, 9 hours from home, and sort of dumped me off. And I think I heard the tires squeal as they were headed out of the parking lot. They threw gravel everywhere. But Mom thought it was a great idea, because when she went to college for one semester and ran out of money and regretted her entire life. And she said, "Hey, when I was in college, my roommate brought 2 bedspreads so that our beds could match." And I remember thinking, okay, fine, that's fine. So we got up to the dorm room, and I'm roommates with Huck, and I don't know Huck from Ben Gum. I didn't know anybody. The only guy I knew was a trainer, a guy named Charlie Cannon. And so Mom makes his bed and makes my bed, and we have matching bedspreads. And Ronnie comes in, he takes one look, he said, "What's that crap on my bed?" I said, "Well, my mommy said, get it off." I said, "Okay." So I went and scrambled. I don't think I've ever told my mom that. She would think less of Huck now. She come to love him like another son, but that would probably upset her.
Oh, so you're at Hard with Coach Prock. Boom, you graduate. You student teacher at Searcy High School, and then you there for a little while. I think my dad was there when you were there, Coach Stolt, back in the day.
Oh, it was awesome. It was awesome. Your dad and Coach Stolt, Ronnie and I mean, Coach Huck and I were both student teaching in PE there together with your dad and Coach Stolt, and some of those other guys, great characters. I mean, great characters. And it was, it was fairly typical of those days. It was roll call, roll the ball, let's go. Yeah. And I remember Coach Stolt going out there, and he was a scary dude. And he goes to the PE classes, and they're all scared to death of him. Huck and I are there, and we're scared to death too. But he said, this is Coach Huckabee and this is Coach Jones. He said, or Mr. Huckabee, Mr. Jones. He said, if they give them any trouble, you're going to answer to me. It was no problem. We had no problem. Those guys were definitely afraid of Coach Stolt. And I remember going in the coach's office, and your dad be pounding the heavy bag.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he loved to do that, and he loved to talk about Brian Kelly Burden. He'd tell me stories about Brian Kelly Burden because he had fought him in Oklahoma City or something. And your dad was such an awesome guy to be around. He had a positive, I tell people when I talk to coaches and they say, well, what do you look for when you interview somebody? I say, I want to look for somebody that fits that positive box. Because I think we all are either negative box or positive box, and I'm trying to figure out, is this a positive box guy or is this a negative box guy? And you never had about 5 minutes with your dad, you knew which box your dad was in.
Yeah.
He was in that positive box because it was so funny. I remember we were doing G scheme.
Oh, yeah.
And I would draw up the G scheme, and your dad would jump up and say, that's the best stuff I've ever seen in my life. And then he'd say, oh, we can't do that.
He loved it. He loved it. Well, you go up for Hardy, play there, have a successful career, go back home to Oklahoma, kind of bounce around for a couple of years. And this is where first time I ever heard the name of Rick Jones. You end up going to Edmond, and you're an assistant, and then boom, as a young coach, you're the head coach.
Yep.
You got a quarterback named Jason Allen.
Yes,
who
I do.
Came up to the University of Arkansas. That's the first time I ever heard coach's name. My dad goes, that's Rick Jones' kid. He said he stood taught for him. He's starting quarterback at the University of Arkansas for the opening season. Talk to us a little bit about going back to Oklahoma City. You just an assistant for a little while, or you're like your dad, where you like to be in charge, or that kind of deal.
I never really set out a plan. I wanted to be the best coach I could be, and I didn't really think about being high school, college, or head coach or coordinator. I wanted to be the best coach I could be. I worked. The best thing that happened to me was getting my shoulder hurt my senior year. I'd had surgery on my left shoulder. Second day of practice my senior year, I tore my right one up, and Coach Prox said, hey, we're going to make you a coach. You're going to help the offensive line. I was a linebacker. Yeah. And I thought, Coach, I don't know anything about it. He said, well, if you want to coach, you'll learn. And so he put me with Coach Johnson, Dick Johnson, wonderful man. And I helped him, and then he asked me to come back and do my GA year and get my master's, and I did that. So I was an O-line guy, and I decided at that time I'm going to be a high school coach. And so I was going to go to Texas. I mean, if you're going to go be a high school coach, why not go to Texas? And I interviewed 5 or 6 different programs down there, great programs, great head coaches. And one of those guys was friends with Henry Manning at Del City, and Henry needed a coach, so he called his friend Ken Murray, who was there at South Grand Prairie, and he said, or maybe he was at Grand Prairie. He's at Grand Prairie. And he said, Kenny, you know any coaches? He said, yeah, I had a young guy. And so Henry called me, and I went to Del City, and I thought Henry was a Texas guy. He was actually from Pauls Valley, Oklahoma, but he had been coaching at Amarillo, Tascosa, and he coached for Eddie Peach at Lamar, legendary coach there. So it was I thought sort of a Texas program. And it's in Del City, and I liked Oklahoma, and so I took the job there as a JV assistant, and then became JV head coach, and then became assistant varsity, and then started coaching the O-line, D-line on the varsity. Then took a job. I wanted to learn how to throw the football, how to coach the passing game, and the best guy in America, especially at that time, was a guy named Mike Little at Putnam City West. Had a guy named Scott Tinsley, was starting quarterback at USC. Mike was one of the greatest minds ever. And so I went to work for Mike to be his O-line, D-line guy, and then he retired, and I applied for the job and didn't get it, but the guy that got it had left Edmond, so essentially I just took the job at Edmond that he left and went to work for John Lance. And John's probably, the coaches in my life, he's probably the most influential. He had a holistic approach, mind, body, spirit. And he that's how he approached coaching. And it was so different than sort of the old school. And I loved it. I mean, I loved it. John was a big reader, and he was always telling me, hey, you need to read this. 1 Minute Manager. I remember reading the 1 Minute Manager, golly, 40 years ago. And still there's things, 1 minute reprimands, 1 minute praisings and things like that I have used throughout. Now they call them 1 minute corrections or something like that. They don't use a bad word, reprimand. But John left, and then I was 30 years old, third biggest school in Oklahoma, and I got the head job just because I was lucky. I was in the right place at the right time. And I think, frankly, they wanted a young guy they could manipulate and use to their own means and not, buck the system very much. But it was a great place. They split that school 3 different ways. But we were there 4 years and had a great run. And like Jason Allen, it wasn't just Jason. I had the Williams boys who both started in the defensive line at Oklahoma State. I had Willis Brown started at Nebraska. I had Shea Foster started at Michigan. We had a ton, and I've left some guys out. We had a ton of good players. I mean, a ton of good players. We were really lucky. Won it in '89. Got beat in '87 in the finals by Lawton. We could have played Lawton 1,000 times, and we couldn't have tied them. They were really good. They had Will Shields, who's NFL Hall of Fame. They had a guy named James Trapp who played for the Raiders. They had Duell Brewer, played running back for the Panthers. Kelly Stinnett was their quarterback. He played Major League Baseball for 14, 15 years. They were pretty good. And but we won it in '89, and then J.W. Emerson retired at Tulsa Union. And we were going to split 3 ways, so I just thought it was a good move to go to Tulsa Union. It was professionally. It was hard. Edmond's awesome. Edmond's a great place. I love those kids to death. I mean, there's probably a dozen of those kids that I'm in contact with on a monthly basis, even after all these years. They're just very special. It's an upper middle class community. The kids are very socially aware, and I was talking to a high school coach in Arkansas today, in fact, and that's why I never thought if you win a lot of games, you can't go to the coaching clinic and strut around like a peacock because we're at the mercy of our situation. You can do the best you can, and that's what I think God wants us to do. Do the best you can with what you have, and because, we won some games at Greenwood. We didn't win it at the same clip at Broken Arrow, and is that because I got smarter? Or is it because of the situation? And it's not something you give up and say, well, we're 5-5. We're going to be. No, we're going to be the best we can be. I remember people stop you at Walmart and say, how many are you going to win? It's as many as we can. Yeah. And I think that's what a real high school football coach's job is. His job is to win all we can. People say, gosh, you won 8 championships at Greenwood. And I said, yeah, and if I'd have coached better, we'd have won at least 10. And that's true. I mean, I'm not. Yeah, I know. I'm just saying it's true. Now, we might have gotten lucky to win a couple that we did, but if I would have been a better coach, we'd have won at least 2 more. And no offense to Billy Dawson.
Well, make sure he hears this. Exactly. Well, talk to us a little bit about this. You jumped to go to Tulsa Union, and Tulsa Union, everybody knows. I mean, it's a nationally known program, and making that jump. And you talked about leaving a 3-school town. It's all into that, going into, and that's a pressure cooker. And you got Broken Arrow and Jinx during that time. Talk to me a little bit about your experience going in that such a bigger school and all that situation.
Yeah, well, it was like I say, Edmond was the 3rd biggest school in Oklahoma at that time, but Union had the facilities, the best, in probably anywhere. They had turf on the field. It was the only turf field, high school field in Oklahoma at the time. They had great facilities. They had a lot of money, in terms of equipment and stuff like that. And I thought they had a lot of potential. The thing that's sort of odd is that they had not had a winning season in 4 years when we went there. Wow. They had sort of fallen on hard times. And Bill Blankenship, who took the job when I left, he and I have laughed about it because I don't think either one of us sort of figured out the movement pattern of a metropolitan area like that. But basically what happened, they built a lot of housing units right around Union that were fairly inexpensive. So a lot of people that were in the city were coming to Union, you know, for obvious reasons. And we had large staff. You know, it was a great opportunity. And the fact that they had not won recently, I think we went 7-4 and 11-2. The first year I think we went 7-4, and then we went 11-2, got beat in the semis, primarily because of my bad coaching. I did some bad coaching, but you know, we were sort of headed that direction. And then Bill got the job and sort of took it to the next level as well. But I was offered an opportunity to go be a position coach at Southwest Missouri State, and I'd worked, like I said, with Mike Little there in Oklahoma City, and Mike's goal was to coach at OU. And when he retired, he just volunteer coached at OU. That was his dream. And I didn't want to be an old guy and never try the college life. And when I got the job at Missouri State, I gave away all my history books that I'd been teaching American history all those years. And I said, I'm never coming back. This is it. I'm going to be a college guy or an NFL guy. And when I got there, and we had a lot of fun there. I got to work with Jesse Branch, one of the best men ever lived. Played at the University of Arkansas, and I love Coach Branch to death. And Mitch Ware, Rick Nelson, Mike Coling, Bobby Boyce, J.C. Harper, Ozzie Riley. We had a great group of guys there. But we were about to get fired, and as is typical. And at that point in time, I was happy. I just knew I'd tried it. I knew what it was like, and I could do it if I wanted to keep doing it, but I could go coach high school and then not have regrets, you know, when I finished. So the Broken Arrow job came open. It's always been a diamond in the rough because it's the biggest school in Oklahoma. We graduated 1,050 seniors the last year I was there. We had 5 middle schools, 2 I-highs, 38 coaches on the football staff. It was a monster. And but it was a place where I thought we could turn that thing around and sort of get it to where it's going, because they'd been sort of mediocre as far as the one-loss record is concerned. And I like the challenge. We were there 9 years, still fighting. We were fighting the day I left. I mean, it was just a fight. It's just the way it was. You got, like you say, you got the Union Jinx. Now you got Union Jinx, Bixby, and Waxbow. And I mean, good grief, Lauren Montgomery, Bixby. I'm not sure anybody's going to beat that guy.
Yeah.
You know, he's really Lauren. I put Lauren up there on the Mount Rushmore. He is unbelievable. His brain works in a really, really neat way, in an interesting way. And I have a lot of respect for Lauren. But I've really come to respect him a lot. There's a coach named Chris Yeager at Mountain Brook High School in Alabama that I've become friends with. And his numbers of participants in high school football at Mountain Brook are double percentage-wise the entire state of Alabama. And Alabama has a pretty high participation rate, because he gave a presentation that I heard a couple months ago. About 1 in 10 boys play football in high school in the United States. And it's about 3 out of 10 in Alabama. And he's like 6 out of 10. It's the craziest thing. And it's him, you know. Coaches don't want to take credit, and neither should we, because we don't block, we don't tackle, we don't throw, we don't catch. But if you have double the participation rate at your school, his team picture, they have 500 boys in their school, and their team picture is they've got 100 guys.
Wow.
It's the doggonest thing I've ever seen. It's so impressive. And a lot of it, Chris wouldn't say it because that's Chris, but it's because of the kind of culture, and I hate to use that word, but it's the kind of culture he's created.
Yeah.
And that's what our challenge is. And I don't expect that I will be a high school football coach again, but that's our challenge as coaches.
No,
because football is great for kids. It's great for boys. And we need to make it where they want to be a part of it. And Lauren obviously has done that at Bixby too, because what he's done is just it's outstanding. And those are great coaches. I'm you know, I know all those guys. I know all of them. You know, there's still guys that I'm connected with there in the Tulsa area, and he's just doing it. He's just doing it, and he's done it the right way, and he's done it smartly. He's a brilliant guy, and he would be the last guy to tell you he's a brilliant guy.
Well, they're at Broken Arrow fighting the fight. You know, you're dealing with
Yeah.
Union and Jinx and all that deal, and
Yeah.
you're battling. You make a move. You know, I remember your name popping up when Daryl Patton got the Fayetteville job. And
I thought I was going to Fayetteville.
I did too.
I didn't think there's any. I thought the way that's sort of a funny story.
Yeah.
But I went and I didn't want to do it because I was always on. I was about 2 board votes away from getting fired at Broken Arrow. So I wanted to sort of be. There's a guy that was after me. And I just wanted to not cause any waves. But when the Fayetteville deal came open, they had so many athletes, and I thought living in Fayetteville is awesome. Go to the Razorback game and go. And my wife loves basketball. Going to basketball games and women's basketball. I just thought it'd be great. And I had friends of mine tell me it might not be as great as I think it is, but I thought that's what we're going to do. Yeah. You know, I went in for I didn't want to interview because I didn't want to say I was interviewing for the job, and so I go up and talk to him, and everything's good. I meet with the suit, meet with the AD. It's all good. And then he calls me up and says, hey, you're going to have to do the official interview. Well, at Fayetteville, the interview's all day.
Yeah.
I met with youth coaches. I met with junior high coaches. I met with teachers. I met with administrators. I went downtown with Rick Schaefer and his bunch of guys that have coffee to meet with them. It was a day-long deal. And I thought it went, I'm so ignorant. I thought it went great. I just thought this is the best thing ever. And I went to see the soup after it was over, and it was cold breeze. And I called my wife and said, oh, don't sell the house. This ain't going to happen. This isn't going to happen. But anyway, it's been funny over the years because Daryl got the job, and Daryl did awesome. And I love Daryl to death. He's done a great job there. He's the best guy for that job. I mean, with his mentality and his approach, he's perfect for that job. They hired the right guy because God has protected me by not giving me the jobs I thought I wanted. I went and interviewed for the Abilene Christian job probably many, many years ago because that's being a Church of Christ boy. That's Notre Dame for us. Yeah. And I went down there and interviewed, and I thought, this is it. This is what I want to do, and I didn't get the job, rightfully so. You know, Jeff, I'll tell you a little clue about coaching in college. If you interview for the head coaching job at a college, and they make the GA drive you to the airport afterward, you're not getting the job.
That's great.
That's another time I called my wife and said, oh, don't sell the house. This didn't happen. I thought it went good, but it didn't go good enough.
Well, it all works out for you. End up
no, that's
Greenwood,
the thing.
You know?
I mean, that's the thing that's so crazy is that you think you need that. It's like getting that first job at Putnam City West when I didn't get it and ended up going to Edmond. It's the best thing ever happened to me. God bless me by not giving me that job. And I really believe that with all my heart. I've been protected more from my own ignorance than I deserve. But Mona, I never would have gone to Greenwood. I'm just telling you the truth. I wasn't going to go. I wasn't going to do it. We're going to win it. We're going to win it. Broken Arrow, or I was going to get fired trying. But we had 2 little kids at the time. She wanted to go to a smaller town. She grew up in Stover, Missouri. And so when I went down there, and Barry Sr. and Gus both said, Rick, get your butt in the car and drive to Greenwood. It's the best job in America. I was like, And I go in there and I met those people, and I called my wife again. I said, listen, you need to find a house. This place is awesome. Their mentality was just so, it was so great. Dr. Johnson was such a great superintendent. They want to be good. People say, what's the secret? They want to be good. Yeah. And they want the band to be good. They want the drama to be good. They want English to be good. They want math to be good. That's just the way they are. They have no, a lot of it's identity, and everybody works in Fort Smith for the most part, and they take great pride in that school. They want to be good at everything. And they not only want to be good, they're willing to pay for it. Yeah. The superintendent has to say on the Fort Smith television station why they're paying that stinking football coach so much money, and she says it is important to us to be good in football and English and math and science, and they have to have the courage to do that, and there's not a lot of them that'll do that these days.
Well, and I've heard Billy Elmore, he worked there as assistant for years, and he said about Greenwood, he said Either they're going to do it and do it right, or just not going to do it.
Yep.
You know, that's just kind of the process. Well, let's talk. You know, get into that a little bit. I mean, very successful. You know, 9 state championships. I think you played 14 or something crazy like that. You had great quarterbacks, and I mean that part, good players. But you ran a system, and you come in. You know, Ronnie Peacock was there before the Harv Welch and kind of established it, and you really took it to another level. And talk to us a little bit, and we'll get into football stuff here in a minute, but I think it's important. Going in there, you got the same approach you got at Broken Arrow. You know, it's a bigger school, or I mean, laying out this is a program. This is where we're going.
Yeah. I remember talking to the kids after I got hired around spring break when I started coming over full time, and we were doing off season stuff like that. And I remember saying, guys, there's a day in July that you're going to run 56 sprints as hard as you can, between 5 and 50 yards. And when you walk off the field, you're going to feel awesome. You know, you just sort of plant that kind of seed, because they had no idea about fast dogs or any of that. They had not done similar stuff. And it was a matter of just sort of planting the seed. Ronnie, to be honest, and I've told people this all over the state, Martina, rest her soul, Ronnie's wife, was really the one that ought to get all the credit, or a lot of it.
He says that.
Because she did the cheerleaders, and she made Friday nights in Greenwood a special event. She made every pep rally an extravaganza of great stuff in which the kids come to the games and they throw their baby powder out, and they just have a great time coming to Friday night games at Greenwood. And Martina, I give Martina a lot of credit. And Ronnie was so innovative with what he did offensively. Ironically, I had played for Ronnie at Harding.
Yeah.
He's, Coach Proc's son-in-law. Martina's Coach Proc's daughter. So there was connections there. We had recruited Harv's quarterback, Derek Jensen, when he was there at Lebanon. I was in Lebanon doing an analytics talk just this week. But it was I sort of felt there was a connection there. The guy that cut my hair in Tulsa grew up in Greenwood, and every time I get my hair cut, he is talking Greenwood. And I got so sick of Brian talking about Greenwood. And he would talk Greenwood this and Greenwood that and Greenwood this and that. And I called him up, and I said, Brian, you're never going to guess where I'm getting ready to go. And he actually, he had a cow trailer that we loaded up with some furniture. And when I started the transition, I filled a room with furniture and lived in that room for about a month before we got situated over there. But it's a special place. It's just a good place, but it's set up to be successful. I told the guys there, I told the coaches, I said, man, I'm telling you, if we don't win here, it's because I'm a horrible coach or we don't have good players, because they're giving us every chance. They're trying. No offense to you, but most athletic directors' first answer is no.
Yeah.
And if you're lucky, you work for a guy like Jerry Cecil, whose first answer was probably going to be, I don't know, but I'll find out. And he really wanted he would try to do everything he could. If we asked, I don't think I asked for stuff totally out of, realm of possibility. But his first answer wasn't no, And I think that's another one of the mentalities that they have there. Their answer is either yes or we'll find out.
Yeah. Well, you're there, and it's funny, and you had all that success. And of course, you'd hear the rumors. Anybody has to.
What rumors?
Well, here's the deal, and this is what always cracks me up about coaching. A guy wins, you're winning there for a couple of years. I mean, you're rolling, and all of a sudden, I think Rick's leaving.
Oh.
And every coach, it's always like that. And so this goes on for a couple of years, and I finally went, that ain't happening. That guy was going to be there until he dies, man. He's crazy to leave. And then, Coach Drinkwitz calls to Missouri, and all of a sudden, boom, Rick Jones is leaving Greenwood, and it is gone. And talk to us a little bit about that process. Eli, and I remember stopping in Fort Smith, Eli, eating dinner with him. He was over visiting with you his whole career at Springdale, different places. Yep. Talk about how that developed, and what was the challenge? I mean, did you feel like at Greenwood, I've done all I can do here. I mean, or not, or just looking for a new challenge?
If you ask my friend Chris Yeager at Mountain Brook, who I mentioned earlier, Chris will coach there until he gets hit by a truck.
Yeah.
Because he's doing it for the right reasons. He's there for those kids. And everybody will say that, but I'm going to tell you, there's a little bit in my own heart that we had done about all we could do.
Yeah.
Now, we hadn't done all we could do in terms of influence kids and making them better and that, but I would like to think that I was more altruistic than, to be honest, I probably am. I was afraid of getting stale. We'd been there 16 years. We'd gone on 16 father-son float trips. We had done 16 Moms 101. We had done hundreds of team dinners. And I was afraid of getting stale, my message getting stale, where it was like Groundhog Day, where we're just, okay, what do we do? What day is it? August 4th. Okay, we do this. I just never want to be that guy. I've always thought it was weird when I go to a coach and I say, how much longer are you going to coach? He said 143 days or a year and 2 months or whatever. I'm like, you've already quit, man. You've already quit. And I figured that I would coach in Greenwood till I got hit by a truck. I just figured that's the way it's going to be. It's the best job in America. It's the best coaching job in America. People are wonderful. Kids are wonderful. Coaches are wonderful. They give you every chance in the world to be successful. But when Coach called me, it's so weird. I'd never thought about leaving. I'm telling you the truth. I never thought about leaving. And Coach called me and said, hey, if I get an off-the-field job up here available, would you be interested? I said, yes. Just like that. And he said, well, I got to finish recruiting. I'll call you in a couple of weeks. And he said, a couple of weeks, he calls me. He said, you ready? I said, yeah. And I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what my title was. I didn't know how much money I'd make. I just knew in my heart I was ready for a change. I was ready for a change. And what it was a great segue, sort of heading out to pasture, except I don't quite want to be in the pasture yet. But Coach Drinkwitz has been awesome. I met him when he was a junior high coach at Alma. And for a Greenwood guy to work for an Alma guy, you've got to humble yourself to do that. It's hard. It's hard every day. But I met him, and it's funny. You know, Jeff, you were in a long time. I met him, I thought to myself, that's a smart kid.
I did too. Yeah.
That's a smart kid. And so, as with most smart kids that I meet, I put them on my Rolodex. Of course, it's the young people, you'd have to explain what that is, but I'd put him on my Rolodex. And from time to time, he went to work for Gus, and then Gus goes on his college adventure, and Coach eventually follows him at a few places, not all, but a few. Coach makes his own way. I mean, I have tremendous respect for Coach Drinkwitz because he was born with no spoon in his mouth, not a silver spoon, no spoon. He had no leg up on the business. Everything that he's accomplished, if there's a such thing as a self-made man, he's a self-made man. He didn't play college football. He didn't have his connections with Gus. Obviously, sort of was a springboard, but he's done it about as much as any coach could do it just on his own. And I have a lot of respect for him. But I stayed in contact. I remember one time I called him up and I said, give me something good against cover 3. And I said, I thought I had this and that. He said, okay, here's what you do. Now there's somebody, and I go, may I take your order, please? And I said, what's that? What's that? He said, I'm at Chick-fil-A for Gus. And I said, okay, I get it. He's telling me all this cover 3 stuff, and he's actually in line at Chick-fil-A getting lunches, getting Gus's snack. But that's what you do.
Yeah.
And there was a time, it's sort of funny, probably 2008 or 9 or 10 or somewhere in there, I had an opening as offensive coordinator, and I called him up. He's at Arkansas State at the time, and he's not making any money. Yeah. I know. He's making $10,000.
Yeah.
And he's living in the dorm.
Yeah.
With 2 baby girls.
Yeah.
And I called him up and I said, you ready to make some money? Because we're going to pay him some real money, probably quintuple his salary. And he said, no, I don't think I'm ready yet. I said, okay, that's fine. But I at least called him. But I just stayed in contact. Is interesting. From time to time, I'll take an East Coast visit because I have a buddy who lives in Manassas, Virginia. And we're I call it a nerdcation because we like to go to Civil War battlefields and museums and stuff like that. But I always put football trips in there. So I spent a day with him at App. What an awesome place, Boone, North Carolina. Do you know they ski in Boone, North Carolina?
Yes.
It's crazy. But it's beautiful. And then I went up and spent a day with Justin Fuente at Virginia Tech, and spent a day at West Virginia when Spav was there. But it was a great trip. But I'd spent some time with him there, so I knew him. It isn't that we were, great friends or buddies, but he's a smart guy, and I keep smart guys in contact because that guy is a really, really smart football coach. And if I can develop a relationship with a football coach that can give me some ideas against cover 3, that's good.
Well, good deal. Well, Mouth, go ahead. We've been waiting over for getting the ball here, man.
Coach, your story is just fascinating. But can you tell me exactly what is your as the assistant to the head coach, what do your duties consist of? I'm dying to know.
I do a little bit of everything. And I told Coach, I'll do whatever he asks me to do. If he wants me to get coffee, I can get coffee. I can do whatever he wants. But it's primarily high school relations. I've been heavily involved in the clinics that we've done up there. I've been heavily involved in the 7-on-7s. I send a newsletter out to high school coaches during the season to a lot of them, and then in the off season I still send it out only to volunteer coaches. And if they're interested in my newsletter, I call them Tiger Notes, rick.jones at missouri.edu. I'll be happy to put you on the list. But I do that, and during the season I do a report for Coach Drinkwitz that I hand to him on Sunday night before I go home. And it's sort of a non-X&O scouting report. It has to do with recruiting, the coach's background. Normally, I'll know the head coach on the opposing team, or I will know somebody that knows him, and I will do some analytics studies about how he is analytically. How aggressive is he going to be on 3rd and 4th down, things like that. And I will do reports. If coach might say, I want you to figure this out, because the amount of information that we have access to is incredible. I mean, between PFF, CAI, Sports Analysis Incorporated, I mean, we have every game, every high school game essentially has been played the last 5 years. Every college game for the last 7, every NFL game from the last 7 years. We have access to all that, and we have access to all the statistical information as well. And on part of I try to make it a 1-page report, and sometimes I cheat and use a really tiny font or go a page and a half. Sort of depending on where it is, but on that report I give to Coach Drinkwitz is sort of the non-X&O stuff, although it will include some analytics stuff. And I did the analytics book for 3 years. Our company, CAI, gives us a book every Monday. And it's about 2 inches, 1.5 inches, 2 inches thick, changes every week. And I make my book, and I'm there on the sideline to try to help him make those decisions on whether you spike it or take a timeout, or whether you go for 1 or go for 2, or whether you go for it on 4th down and things like that. I would like to think of myself as just sort of being I'm coach's assistant, whatever that means. Whether it's seems like a important job or a not important job doesn't matter to me. His first year there, he was the head coach, quarterback coach, and offensive coordinator.
Wow.
It was incredible. I mean, it was incredible. And to this day, I can't beat the guy to work. I cannot beat him to work. I take pride in being one of the first guys there, because I'm going to walk for an hour when I get there. I'm not even going to start work. I can't beat him there for my walk. He's there all the time. He has 4 baby girls, precious baby girls, has a wonderful wife, and he is working. It never ends. I have I have great respect for his work ethic.
Yeah, right there.
Listening to how good a place Greenwood is to coach and how nice it is, and we play those suckers here in a couple months. So,
Good luck. Good luck, brother.
You've alluded to it a little bit so far today, and some of the things that go into making a successful program. You talked about hiring coaches that check the positive box. Coaching, win the games that you can win, as many as you can.
Yep.
What's one thing that you would go back and tell yourself as a first-year head coach, or something you might do a little differently?
That's really a great question. I gave a talk to a bunch of firemen in Tulsa about 3 weeks ago, and one of the slides on the PowerPoint is a picture of me my first year coaching and a picture of me now, and it's what would the old guy tell the young guy?
Yeah.
Sure.
And it's so cliche. I mean, it's so cliche. But it's not about the X's and O's. It's about the Johnny and the Joes. Mm-hmm. And Coach, I would just say, don't ever forget that. Because Jeff will tell you, I filled boxes full of napkins at restaurants with coaches or in the lounge at a clinic or something like that. And I love clinics. I mean, I'm a second row guy. I to this day, even though I'm not in the ball itself, I love that aspect of it. But I think I would tell my young self is to make sure it's for them. What you're doing is for them. You're making them better. And sometimes that's hard. It's hard on them. You're hard on them because you're trying to make them better, but it's got to be your heart. And I think that's part of what has inspired me about getting to know Coach Yeager. I've mentioned him now 3 times, is that if you have double participation in your program from everybody else in the state of Alabama, you're doing something right. And you're doing it for the kids. You're doing it for the right reason. And he's winning a ton of games too. It isn't like he's not winning. He's winning games. And we have that. Every coach that listens to this heard it's not about the X's and O's, it's about the Johnny and Joes, but that's true. Normally in that context, it's about how talented you are or how, skilled you are. Mm-hmm. But I think if I could tell myself one thing, focus on, and I think I did a pretty good job, but it's focus on the kids. And to be bold. Don't be a chicken. My regrets are a lot more of omission than commission. I mean, there's a 2-point. We could have gone for 2 and beaten Union in the quarterfinals in overtime and double overtime, and we kicked the tie and missed the kick. Mm-hmm. And we were as good as they were, but we probably had a better chance of winning the game. I didn't think we were going to miss the extra point to tie, but we'd have probably had a better chance to win the game right there to do that. To be a little more bold, take a few more risks. And part of it is in the last 3 years, I've learned the numbers, with the analytics book and stuff like that. So it makes more sense now, but just take a few more risks. Don't play it so safe. I think that's part of, that's the thing is that I think most people would probably look and say, it's like we've won 9, but we could have won 12.
Yeah.
We were good enough to win 12. And had I coached better, had I pushed the edge of that envelope a little more, been a little more aggressive maybe, because by nature I'm conservative. I'm conservative, and I think that's part of it. And not to be hard-headed about what I want to do and be more open to what we can do. Mm-hmm. I think it's part of it. And I do know this, and I knew it going in, is that what worked at Union might not work at Broken Arrow exactly the same way. Even though you're coaching Homo sapiens, you're coaching kids that grew up together. Mm-hmm. What works at one place might not work at another. But I think there's some things that work everywhere, and how you treat kids in your priorities, God, church, family, academics, football, everything else. That works everywhere. That hasn't changed. We hand out our team policy that I handed out in 1986 Edmond High School is almost identical to the one I handed out in 2019 at Greenwood.
Really? Yeah.
Our priorities haven't changed. You know, some of the things, you've had to add a few things. In the old days, you couldn't take a camera into a locker room and take pictures of your buddy and put it on the internet.
Yeah,
sure.
So you have to adjust in some ways there. But I think to those guys you get to coach every day, pour into them. And I, by experience, when they're after my job, it's really hard to do that. When the sharks are circling you and the wolves are howling, it's really hard to do that because you get so focused on the fact that you might not have a job and you have 2 little kids and a wife and a mortgage and all that. And sometimes I would think that my relationship with those kids is different than it was at those places where I did not feel threatened. And I think that's my weakness. Hey, coach, it's tough. It's tough. But I've got to be tough enough that it doesn't affect my relationship with the kids.
Yeah.
And I think I did that. I think I did that to a fault. I'm being honest.
Yeah. I guess, that's such an intense thing to think about is the difference of just the atmosphere of your job and your security, I guess, job security.
Yep.
Which is part of the game. But moving on to some of the analytics that you talked about and how it's changed kind of how you view the game, and it's a huge part of your job now. And I remember how intense it was as a graduate assistant at Memphis when Mike Norvell needs to know if we need to go for it or not, or what we need to do. It's an intense moment.
There's no doubt.
Speak a little on that and maybe some of the intense situations that you've been in with your current
See,
role.
there is, it's intense,
Yeah.
and it's really. It's not like you're sitting there saying, go get them, guys. Because if I was just there watching the games, I've had the best seat in the house for 3 years.
Sure.
It's an awesome seat. I mean, I've seen them all. I mean, I walk out on the tunnel the first game. They're in Columbia. And there's Nick Saban on the 50-yard line looking all mad and everything. I'm like, how great is this? But because it's like you said, Coach is going to say at some point in time, 1 or 2, and he doesn't have 10 seconds to figure it out.
Yeah.
And he's going to say, timeout or spike, timeout or spike. And you got to know. Can we take a knee? You got to know. You know, if ask Mario Cristobal.
Yes.
Yep.
If you do that wrong, you can lose the game. If I tell Coach the wrong thing, he can lose the game. And that means that now that I'm working remotely, if I can sit on my couch and I can root for the Tigers, I can say, go get them, boys. And I'm going to let Brendan worry about Coach Drinkwitz. Sure. But that's the thing. You can't be wrong, Coach. You can't be wrong. And I did an analytics talk to some coaches in Lebanon on Tuesday, and the deal is that more mistakes are made than you realize. 4 years ago, Georgia was in the same situation, ran 2 plays after they could have taken a knee, fumbled on the second one, and got it back. And maybe nothing happens, maybe something does, but when you take a knee, you got to take a knee. When you take a delayed knee, you got to teach your kids how to take a delayed knee. A spike a spike costs you 7 seconds as opposed to a timeout on average. And the way that the chart works, it gets weird in the last 4 minutes of the half in the game because ideally I've got to check the chart with when the clock with when the ball snapped. Because if the clock's not running, a trained monkey could do it.
Sure.
A highly trained monkey. But a trained monkey could do it. But once the clock's running on second down, I need to refigure. And what I would do is let the play clock run down to 30 and then subtract 30 from what it said on the chart. And my math skills, my eyesight's not great. I'm not making excuses. I'm just telling the truth that I can't be wrong. Because North Carolina 5 years ago took 3 knees and punted from the 50. And there's $15 million worth of coaches on the sideline. And the guy that had the book is a buddy of mine. I said, Bud, what happened? He said, I don't even want to talk about it. I don't blame you. But it happens all the time. Yeah. But when for any coach out there, when you take a knee, you got to take a knee. Not one more play. Now, here's the deal. Statistically, in Division I football, when you hand the ball off, you lose that ball 1% of the time. It's 1%. So every 100 times you hand the ball off, 1 out of 100 times you lose the ball. Now, pass is different. And so everybody knows turnovers, explosive plays. You get into what causes winning and losing. Turnovers, explosive plays, everybody knows. But my next question is, how do you prevent turnovers and how do you cause them? Because I bet $10 you do ball protection drill in practice, and I bet $10 you do ball disruption deal on the other side of practice, on your defensive practice. Mm-hmm. And the truth is that I think that's all good, but I don't think that's the deciding factor. Mm-hmm. And what I told coaches that I've gotten to talk to is that if you have a football during a play in practice, that is a time to teach ball disruption and ball protection every single snap. Mm-hmm. Because everybody's high and tight in ball protection drill. Everybody has 5 points of pressure. Everybody's squeezing, all that stuff we teach. But then we go to pat and go, and they're out here like, just flipping the ball around. Mm-hmm. It's every snap. If you see daylight, every snap. That's one thing. If you go to practice at Greenwood, Arkansas, I promise you, when the wide receivers are doing pat and goes, they are tucking that thing tight with 5 points of pressure. It's every single time. And every time on defense, they get a chance, we're going to give them one whack at it, try to create it. But it's the situations that actually cause the turnovers. It's throwing the ball is more risky than running the ball, as the great Darrell Royal said many, many years ago. Only 3 things can happen when you throw the ball, and 2 of them are bad. But it's really true. And we threw it 65 times in the state championship game. We're not afraid to throw it. But you put the offense in situations where they have to throw the ball. Now, what bad can happen? If I hand off to a guy, what bad can happen? Well, he can lose yards or he can fumble 1 out of 100.
Yeah.
When I throw the ball, I can get sacked. I can get strip sacked. I can get the ball tipped. I can drop the ball. I can throw a pick. There's a lot of bad things can happen when you throw the ball. Mm-hmm. And so you avoid those situations. You throw when you want to. And that's part of what I found interesting about the analytics, because everybody thinks analytics is about fourth down situations. That's all they see. That's all they hear about. Do you go for it on fourth? Do you not? But there's a lot of math in clock management is so crucial. I mean, it is so crucial. And I was probably a little bit ahead of the game. We always had the chart. I'd read a book years ago by a guy named Jack T. Reed, Clock Management. It's a great book. It's sort of out of date now. Mm-hmm. And the rules have changed in college, and, where they run the clock after first downs, and now we're going to have a 2-minute warning.
That's right.
And you say, oh, that's no big deal. Well, our analytics company gave us about 20 pages of information that we really have to be familiar with because of the changes with just a 2-minute warning. Have you ever wondered why an NFL coach with 2 seconds to go calls timeout?
Yeah.
Is that not the craziest thing?
Yeah.
He saved 2 seconds.
Yeah.
What's he thinking?
Yeah.
Well, believe it or not, I can't remember off the top of my head, but there is a reason to do that. There's a certain circumstance which you do it. Have you ever declined a 15-yard penalty?
No.
No. In my life. Have you ever thought about it?
No. It's automatic. Didn't think
you
about
can go to the Chiefs. You can go to the Chiefs-Ravens game, and Ravens jump offsides 1st and 5. It's in 4-minute offensive time, and I can get into the weeds with the DSSR and stuff like that. But essentially, 1st and 5 is like 85% shot of making first down. 1st and 10 in normal situations is around 71%, but in 4-minute offense situation, it's about 57%. So the thought process is, and I knew this, and I actually did it when we were coaching, but I didn't know exactly why. But if it's 1st and 5, jump off sides, make it 1st and 10, because 5 yards doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is the clock, and that's what you have to understand. And so the Ravens did it exactly right. They jumped off sides 1st and 5 accidentally, and then they jumped off sides on purpose, which is exactly what they're supposed to do. But the guy threw the guy down, and they called 15 yards on him. And ideally, the Chiefs would have declined that penalty because it made them 1st and 10 instead of 1st and 5. And they would have had an opportunity to run off more clock with 1st and 5 by making another first down.
Wow.
But that's
But
see,
that-
that's the kind of
that's
stuff.
But that
intense,
information, that's different from winning and losing. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
At the end of the day,
Absolutely.
I mean, or putting yourself in,
Yeah.
putting your team in the best position.
We had a kid at Broken Arrow that jump off sides. Our left guard jump off sides about 3 times a game. Bless his heart. And so we named a play after him in which we were in a situation where we wanted to take a penalty because in those days, if you're winning the game and you're close to being able to take a knee but not quite, we could jump off sides, let the clock run down, jump off sides. They'd march us back and rewind the clock.
Yep.
And you could save 25 seconds or so. Now that's sort of outlawed now. In college, in the last 2 minutes, penalties are horrendous because if you're ahead, they stop the clock, and if you're behind, they wind it. Essentially, I actually talked to a Big Ten white hat about a month ago to go over all of this stuff because you have the 10-second runoff and you have more stuff. It's more complicated, but it's important, Coach, as a high school coach, that you understand clock rules in terms of running the clock, whether you decline or accept a penalty and things like that. It's important they should know that because once you can hit a knee, you can win the game. You can win the game if you can just take a knee. So you need to know because like I say, in college, and I don't even remember the high school rules, but in college, in those late game situations, you can have access to a 10-second runoff if they don't take timeout and different things like that. And if the clock's running, normally in high school football, if the clock's running when the penalty's committed, it'll keep running after they mark it for play. And if it's not running, they'll mark the penalty and not run it.
Yeah.
That's in general how it is in high school. But it's little things like that are fascinating to me. I just dive down the rabbit hole. And with the 2-minute warning, it's gonna be a big deal. Now the new clock rule was sort of over. It was sort of over. There weren't that many more plays with the new clock ruling because what's happened is the white hats have been cheating it the whole time. They've been stopping it for 3 or 4 seconds instead of 7 or 8. And so it ended up being somewhere 4 or 6 extra plays a game because they're not stopping the clock on first downs until the last 2 minutes. Little things like that.
Well, you get into those things. You talked about Mike Lombardi with the 8-minute offense.
Yeah.
Talk to as a coach. We've heard 4-minute offense, 2-minute offense, and for our audience, 4-minute offense. You're ahead. You're trying to milk the clock.
You're really trying to run the ball.
Run the ball.
You're trying to run the ball.
Get a
Run
couple
the clock.
first downs. Take a knee.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit. Mike Lombardi's well known.
Yeah.
Worked with the Raiders, with the Patriots, with
Yeah.
Belichick, and all that. Al Davis. Talk to us a little bit about you're good friends with him about the 8-minute offense
Yeah.
and what you steal from him also.
Yep.
What you steal from Mike.
Oh
you
yeah.
know.
Well, the thing is that I'd never heard the term 8-minute offense, but it's the last 4 minutes of the second quarter, first 4 minutes of the third quarter, and he said that's the most important 8 minutes of the game. And I mean, everybody can argue all this, but statistically, by the numbers, in terms of winning percentage, winning the first quarter is not a whole lot different numbers-wise than winning the middle 8.
Yeah.
But the key with the middle 8 that it hit me, and even though I understood it to a certain extent, I just didn't understand the numbers behind it, is that if we defer, and there's about a 2% advantage in deferring, if we defer to start the game, then that means we get the choice in the third quarter. And so if we're going to receive the ball in the third quarter and we're going to end the half, and we can end the half with the ball, that means we get an extra possession. And what I tell the coaches that I talk to when I do my analytics talk is that here's something you need to write this down. I make them get the pen out and get their notebook out. You can't score without the ball.
Exactly.
That's a pretty basic rule of football. So as long as they don't have it, you win. But what happens is if we end the half with the ball and we receive the ball, we can have an extra possession. Yeah. We can't have, it depends on how it does at the end of the game. But, I mean, it does mean you're going to get an extra possession, and you can't score without it. So it gives you an advantage. So what that means is for the last 4 minutes of the second half, instead of, like us, we're hurry up, no huddle, go get it. Instead of just going bang, 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 trying to score as fast as we can, in theory, you should slow it down a little bit. I have a hard time doing that. Coach Young will tell you that. I said, no, let's score right now. I'm going. Let's go. But just try to run that clock down a little bit. And there's a sweet spot in the numbers between 141 and 120 to get the last possession of the half at its maximum value. It's in that 140 to 120 where you can run your offense and run a number of plays without giving the opportunity for the opponent to respond. Because if I give you the ball back, Jeff, with 20 seconds to go in the half, you're probably not doing anything. No. You know what I'm saying? But there's a 140 to a 120 where you have maximum potential to score and your opponent not retaliate. And those numbers are all there. It's just fascinating to me. And I go down rabbit hole after rabbit hole. But that 4-minute deal, Michael Lombardi talks about that all the time. And I've sort of become football buddies with Michael. Very, very lucky. He's so gracious. He's unbelievable that he will answer my stupid text messages, when I ask him questions and things like that.
Well, that's very, very interesting because the 8-minute, the 2-for-1 deal.
Yeah.
And they did it. New England was known for it back in the day with Belichick, getting those aspects. Well, talk to us a little bit about this. I was talking to one of your former assistants last night on the phone, and he
doing
brought
your
up,
research.
I did a little research on you, and he took over as offense coordinator there at Greenwood. He might be the head coach right now.
We're not going to mention any names.
We're not going to mention any names. It might be Chris Young, but we'll go ahead and talk about it. And he talked to me about and of course, I coached against you 100 times. It didn't do very well against you, but it is what it is. But he talked about your calm demeanor on the sideline, but he also brought up that his first game he went down the first 6 possessions and scored a touchdown. And said at the end of the game, said he saw Coach Jones, saw you walking down there looking for the pat on the back, and he said, we didn't score on our 7th. And said, Coach Jones may let me know he was upset that we didn't score on the 7th. He goes, I ain't worried about it. He said, you don't look ahead. You're always in the moment, and you don't look in the past. And he goes, dadgummit, we were trying to get better at that position. Talk to me a little bit about your mindset on the sideline. Yeah. You've coached against people hooping and hollering. Yeah. And is that your demeanor, or?
That's the only way I can do my business.
Gotcha.
I'm not smart enough to jump around and have a lot of hysterical behavior on the sideline. We were head coach for 31 years and never got a flag.
Yeah.
Ever. And I'm proud of that. I got along great with officials. To be honest, Jeff, I thought it would help us.
Yeah.
I thought if it got tight, we would get an advantage because I'm so nice to them. I think that's bullcrap.
Yeah, I was nice to them too. It didn't work for me either.
But as the great American poet Martina McBride said, you do it anyway. But I did not want officials to and I'm telling you, it's hard to get officials these days. And I don't think they're making $60. It's not enough money to go get abused.
That's not true anymore, Coach. Prices have been raised.
Oh, I figure that's true.
Inflation.
I figure that's true. Yeah, inflation. Yeah, but I could not. I'm not smart enough to jump around and do a lot of different things. If I'm calling a game, I've got to be locked in. If I'm calling a game and the head coach, I don't have time to jump around and yell at officials. I'm trying to do my job. And I think I give up something in terms of being inspirational maybe, because I'm not going to be a rah-rah guy. I'm going to be, I would guess, stoic, because I'm thinking about all this stuff that we've been talking about, and my brain's only so big. Yeah. It'd fall out of my ear if I tilt my head. So I'm not going to get myself worked up into a frenzy where I'm going to miss something if all possible. Because the worst thing, Jeff, you know this, the worst thing about our job is screwing it up for those kids.
Yeah.
And you go in that locker room and you look them in the eyes And man, I'm sorry. I messed that up for you. You had a chance and I blew it. And I don't want to have that talk. And I just don't think that it helps anything. For one, we ought to be grateful that the officials have come out there. I've only thought they've tried to mess up maybe once or twice. There was a crew in Muskogee one night, and I think they were all cousins. They were all named Larry. 3 of the 4 named Larry. And I'm just going to give you a hint. And when that happens, you're probably screwed. And there was one at Fort Smith Southside when Barry was there.
Yeah.
And the guy's a big, heavy-set guy, and he comes out, and he's licking his fingers, and he's got barbecue all over his striped shirt. And I said, and we're coming from Oklahoma. I said,
know who you're
boys,
talking about. Yeah.
we're not getting a call tonight, so you better go. Barry's been feeding them barbecue the whole time. And there was another crew at Morrilton that I believe tried to cheat us. I believe they came there to cheat us. And I don't know why, but I do believe that. But I mean, it's almost 400 games, so that's not too bad to have 3 or 4 out of 400.
You remember. Well, Coach,
And I forgot it, though. So
exactly the world. Talk to us a little bit about this. You always did this in your career. And I would tell this. I don't think anybody even knows this. You don't know for sure. I would find out because you were always going to add something. You would see something. You were going to go see somebody and add something. Yep. My job all off season was to find out where you're going, and then I'd have to send somebody or go talk to somebody and say, okay, then get back and then try to figure it out. We do a lot of 7-on-7 team camps together and stuff. And I try to have to figure out, okay, that's what he's going back to. Talk to us about the growth in that part.
Yeah.
You're sitting there winning a state championship.
Yeah.
You're winning. Your stuff's working. It is what it is. But you're adding to it and growing your offense or your program.
I don't know. Did you coach against Don Campbell, the general?
No, but him and the old man were big
gosh,
buddies.
I love Don
I was at
to
the
death.
game, though, yeah.
I love
Good
Don
man.
to death. He ran his offense for 35 years, and that would drive me batty. And I'm not ADD. I hear coaches say all the time, well, I might be ADD. I'm not ADD. I want to find the next best thing.
Yeah.
I want to push the edge of the envelope here. Who's out there doing something? I'll tell you right now, the guy, if you're an offensive coach right now, you ought to be taking your rear to Las Vegas and talking to their OC. That guy is doing innovative, cool stuff. Jamie at a Liberty, he's doing some cool stuff. He's got a little bit of option in there, a little bit of spread, a little bit of option. And the guy at Vegas is doing the same thing. There's a little bit of option. He'll line 2 backs up on the side, just does some weird things. But what I would do is after we finished our season, I'd watch as many of the bowl games as I could. And when I saw somebody, and I was the film guy at Missouri State, and I still had film contacts, so I could look and say, ooh, I wonder, I need to see more of that. And then I could scrounge up some film. Back in those days, it was hard to do, but I could scrounge up some film. Or if they were somewhat close, we could go take a visit. Because I'd watch them during the bowl games and see who's doing some really, what I thought was really innovative and cool stuff and try to get up on it. But I love it's like I mentioned earlier about the Johnny and the Joes. I really love the X's and O's. I'm fascinated by it. To be honest, I'm not as much right now. I'm more big picture oriented. I'm trying to figure out how to help coaches.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what my number one goal is right now, to come in and do a clinic and help coaches or teach them some things about analytics and things like that. That's the thing that sort of moves my needle right now. But I just never wanted to get stale. I never wanted to just do the same old stuff, because this football world is changing, and it's changing fast. The X's and O's are changing. Training principles are changing. And I did not ever want to get behind so that our kids were at a disadvantage because I hadn't gone out and tried to learn everything I could during the off season. And I tell people, if I have any superpower at all, it's that I'm unembarrassable.
Yeah.
I'll ask anybody, anything, anytime, and I'm not going to be rude or be inappropriate. But if I find a guy you know, the former head coach at Northwestern sitting in an airport one day waiting on a plane. Pat Fitzgerald, and I just happened to slide over to him and say, "Hey, Coach." He'd actually given me a plaque that day, so I sort of had a good segue in there. But said, "Hey, I was wondering, how do you do?" And he was more than gracious, But that's just sort of my nature. I saw a guy in the airport, and I'm going to go. There's a seat next to him. I'm going to be there. That's just the way it is.
Because you might not ever get that opportunity again.
No,
That's why I always look at it,
we're grown men, and if I ask one question and he acts like he doesn't want to mess with it, thanks, Coach. We'll see you. I don't want to be rude or obnoxious or anything, but I mean, if I'm just bored sitting in an airport and some guy comes sits next to me and asks me football stuff, I'm ready to go. Yeah, I'm ready.
Yeah, Bray.
Well, you've moved around a couple different states, right? Oklahoma, Arkansas, from Texas. You're here on Dixon Street at Ben's apartment. What's it like to, I guess, jump into a college program that's really been, argue rivals of the state that you've been coaching in for a very long time?
It's awesome. But it's awesome because of our one-loss record in the last 4 years against Mizzou. But Coach Drinkwitz, he loves to poke the bear now.
He does.
He loves to poke the bear, and it. To be honest, for coaching myself, we love it. Yeah. We love it. We've had some great battles with Arkansas, and my great uncle had a grocery store right around here somewhere back in the 50s. I mean, we're Arkansas people, actually. My grandmother, my mom, my uncle, they were all born around Fort Smith, Arkansas. But it's fun to sort of be a part of that deal, and I'm so proud of what Coach Drinkwitz has done because we've held our own with those Razorback guys, and I enjoy sort of, I don't say making fun because that's cruel, but I enjoy the success that we've had the last 3 of the 4 years we've played, to tell you the truth. But it is cool. When I'm like a little kid. I'm sitting there like we got to coach at Georgia, Florida, Auburn. I mean, I'm like a little kid. I pinch myself thinking I'm actually here, And when we play here at Arkansas, how cool is that? I enjoy that. I would love to go to War Memorial and play Arkansas, to be honest, like they did the year before we got there. And I understand why they don't, but I understand that we've had some pretty good fun there at War Memorial. It means a lot to me as well. But it is cool, and Coach has done such a good job, and there at Missouri, so it's made it even more fun.
What's the next step for Missouri, for your program? What direction are y'all headed right now?
Well, I think we're headed in the right direction. 11 wins is huge. We have when I got there, and Coach sort of gave me an idea of what he wanted me to do. I think if anything, maybe it'd be a sounding board, because I have no motivation other than to help Coach Drinkwitz. That's the only job. That's my number one job. I'm there to help him. If he says get coffee, I go get coffee. I don't care. He says clean the toilet, I'll clean the toilet. I'll do whatever he needs me to do. But I think that the thing that's important is to sort of see the big picture, and we've taken those incremental steps. We've gone 5-5 in an all SEC schedule the first year, which is really pretty good when you inherit a team in this day and age. And then we go 6-7, 6-7, lose both the bowl games. And this year we're picked 7th out of 8, And I thought that was way wrong just because we had so many kids coming back. But I think the way Coach has set the thing up is that we can sustain our success that, similar, if not the same as we had last year. Georgia, in the way the conference is set up now, we don't play Georgia, Florida, or Tennessee.
Wow.
Oh yeah, sure.
It's just different, and it's sort of going to depend on how you fall in your conference schedule. I mean, we have A&M, Auburn, Alabama, and blah blah blah, but it ain't going to be easy. But it gives us a chance, in non-conference, I think non-conference is workable. And I think to compete with the 12, going to the 12,
Yeah.
I mean, if you ask, it's to make playoffs every year.
Yeah.
Sure.
You know, I think that's what the people in Missouri expect. We have some advantages over Arkansas, in that we do have the major metropolitan areas in Kansas City and St. Louis, so that the numbers of recruitable players close to us is a little bit better. The disadvantage is we have the Royals and the Chiefs and the Cardinals and that. So we're not a one act play. But in the high school football, it's interesting, the high school football in Missouri, because it's quite a bit different than it is in Arkansas. But in terms of numbers, there's going to be more numbers. But I mean, everybody's going to recruit a kid in St. Louis. You know, a kid in St. Louis can go to Oregon or Florida or Georgia or Alabama. There's not. We got to go in there and fight like crazy for those guys. Luther Burden, our 5-star wide receiver from East St. Louis, is just a guy that I think Luther's personality is such that I'm going to show all of you. And he's gonna play his 3 years at the University of Missouri. He's going to be a first-round draft pick, and he's going to show everybody that. And the thing that I try to tell the parents when they're on visits is that a St. Louis kid or a Kansas City kid, hey, say the best happens, he plays 10 years in the NFL. Then what he's going to do? You know, he's 35 years old. Yeah. What's he going to do for the rest of his life? Is he going to go to Columbus, Ohio, or Athens, Georgia, or is he going to come back to St. Louis and try to find a job?
Yeah.
And you know, it's like Tyler Wilson. Tyler Wilson, you know, had a cup of coffee in the NFL. He was offered by Alabama, LSU, and everybody. He comes home, and he's in commercial real estate in Little Rock. And I got a pretty good sense that if Tyler wants to get an appointment with anybody in this state, he's got a pretty good shot. Yeah. And if he would have gone to Alabama or LSU or whatever, it might be different. You know, it isn't it. You know, he's good at what he does, so it might not matter. But I think it gives you that foot in the door, at least. And for a Missouri kid, St. Louis kid, Kansas City kid, they ought to come here. And the caveat is if we can pay them decent money.
That's true.
That's a huge caveat.
And the way that our NIL has been set up is that we focus on those footprint guys. You know, from East St. Louis to Kansas City, Kansas, in between, we're going to really focus our guys on that. But those rules are all changing. You can throw it all up in the air now because it's going to be so different when the schools take control. The thing that's interesting is that as long as outside consortiums or whatever you want to call them, they use different terms, but when they are controlling the money, Title IX is not an issue. But when the school starts controlling money, Title IX is going to be an issue. So that it's going to be different. Yeah. It's going to be interesting.
Well, talk to us about this. And you've got a little background in this. OU and Texas coming in the league.
Yep.
Well, can't get much out of those guys across the border over there. We've talked to a few guys. They don't say a lot about it. You know, talk to me. Obviously, great traditional programs.
Yep.
You know, they've been in the Big 12.
And Texas, Texas is a playoff team last year as well, and Oklahoma's beaten Texas plenty often. Yeah. So it's going to be two more good teams. It's going to be. I think the thing that's going to be a little bit different is that the overall talent level. And I'm not bragging because we're SEC. I'm just look at the NFL draft.
Yeah.
Look the most conference with the most players drafted SEC all the time, and it's not close. You know, between the SEC and the Big 12. And I'm an Oklahoma guy. I mean, I love the state of Oklahoma. I don't really love OU or OSU, but I think that what's going to be interesting is just see how Oklahoma and Texas adjust to that every week. Yeah. You know, we got a stretch where we go Tennessee, Georgia, Florida. You know, and say, hello, how's that feel for 3 straight weeks, you know, to take that on. And some of the scheduling stuff that you get in, we got Alabama, we got Auburn, we got, you know, this, and we got that. And it's not that those other teams, you know, Baylor, Oklahoma State, and they're darn good teams. Yeah. I mean, they're great teams. They can beat any of us on any given day, but it's that every week. every week you got somebody coming in there who's going to beat your tail if you're not ready to go. And I think that's going to be the biggest difference. I mean, Texas and Oklahoma, talent-wise, they can compete. There's no doubt. They can compete. I think what I thought would be interesting is that how much of an advantage did Texas A&M have recruiting Texas when they were in the SEC? Was it an advantage? Well, the numbers probably don't show that it was. But now we got Texas and Oklahoma coming in. Would that make us better? You know, Missouri, Gary Pinkel was great at Texas recruiting. And we haven't been as strong. Will that make us better? Because now we got Oklahoma and Texas in the league, and because there's more chance of closer games. You know, if we sign a kid out of Dallas, his parents have to figure out a way to get to Athens, Georgia, and Florida, and you know, South Carolina and stuff like that. And now there's a little better chance that they'll have closer games traveling wise. I don't know how that's going to affect them. I don't know how that's going to affect Texas A&M recruiting against Texas either.
That is interesting, you know, with them being the only ones in the SEC now. You got more. It could help them a little bit because they, because they're going to be close to each other.
If you're recruiting, you got to spin it. So you got to. If you're Texas A&M, you got to spin it. Say, hey, this is awesome, because I bet Texas A&M fought kicking and screaming to keep Texas out.
Yeah, sure.
I would just think, but now they say, hey guys, we got a chance, and depending on how the schedule works out, we might play. You know, we play half our games here, and then we might have a home game at A&M and a home game at OU, no telling.
Yeah. Well, talk to us a little bit about this. We'll get you off here. Is, you know, the landscape of college football right now. We talked to a lot of guys, you know, as far as the conferences, you know, the ACC and that. And you look out in the future a little bit, and you talk to a lot of people. And nobody has an answer, but if you had a crystal ball, what do you see in the next 5 years? Or less.
I'm speaking for nobody other than myself. University of Missouri should not be held liable for what I say. If they're going the way that it appears they're going, I do not see any way to avoid the super conference.
Yeah.
I don't because I live in Springfield. I work remotely, and I live in Springfield, and I'm pretty familiar with the Missouri State guys there at the 1AA level who's now – going to Conference USA next year, and to see just the difference in day-to-day operations, in the differences between this league and that league and things like that. I don't know how they're going to afford it, and especially if you do it through the school, because if you do it through the school, then there has to be a sense of equity involved as well, because it doesn't work very well when your football players are driving Beamers and your volleyball girls are getting car wash tickets. Yeah. And that's not going to work with Title IX. And so I don't know how they're going to avoid that. And the upside is kids deserve to get paid. I mean, I believe that. They deserve to get paid. Yeah. You believe that, Bray?
Absolutely.
You wish you'd been paid?
Well, Bray's been pushing for a fallback to the NIL deal. Yeah. He's been upset about this whole thing.
Yeah.
He thinks
back payment.
You're going to get some money, aren't you? Won't you get some money when they get the settlement?
I think it's.
Are you outside the window?
I'm outside the window.
Oh, Bray.
I was GA at the time that they're talking about.
You need money from being a GA.
Yeah.
I guarantee you they weren't overpaying you for that.
No, they were not. No, they were not.
But I just don't see any other way around it, because the difference between the haves and the have-nots just seems to just keep growing. Now, I will tell you something that I think is interesting. If you look at the Final Four the last 3 or 4 years, it's not the major powers to a certain extent. It's those guys that get their kids in there. I call it the Wichita State syndrome. You're playing one and dones against 4th and 5th year guys who know how to play. They're not going to be the 5-star recruits, but they know how to play. And as long as that window was open where you could do that and be competitive, to me, that's the most fun. Mm-hmm. You know, where you go up there and because of your program, because of your development. Because, Bray, you know this as well as I do. Everybody will say, you know, we're a developmental program. In the next sentence, you say, how do you develop your players? You just get crickets. Mm-hmm. I don't think a lot of those people know how to actually develop players. Now you lift weights and run, you eat right and do things like that. I'm talking about an old lineman getting his footwork down, getting his pad level, getting his balance, getting his ability to move and pull and pass block and stuff like that. How do you develop them in the off season and make them better? When you look at the NFL draft, it's so crazy. I love this. This drives me crazy because it makes my brain just blow up. In 2021, the 11 All-Pro NFL players on offense averaged 2.5 stars.
Wow.
That's interesting.
2 of them had no stars. There were 2 4 stars.
Wow.
And now on defense, and this is what's awesome. On defense, it was 3.5. And my theory is that defense is easily measured. Can you run? Can you hit?
Yeah. Yeah.
Offense is subtle. Lane Johnson. Everybody knows me is tired of hearing about Lane Johnson. Lane Johnson, quarterback in high school, tight end at JUCO, one of the best tackles in the world.
Yeah.
And how does that happen? And you go watch the NFL draft and you see what was their rankings. There's only 45 stars in the world at any given time. There's 40, 35 to 45. There's 40. That is a tiny percent.
Yeah.
58% of those will make it on an NFL roster. Now you can say that's pretty good, or you can say that's pretty crappy. 58%. So that means 42% of the top 0.008 high school seniors make it, and of them, a little over half, only over half will make it the NFL roster. But I just find that kind of stuff fascinating, because for a program like Missouri or a program like Arkansas, I think you have to sort of think outside the box, because those guys getting drafted. Now there's Alabama and Georgia and a lot of those guys getting drafted, but there's also a lot of guys that are not from there. And you're saying, how'd they get there? You know, how did a 2-star get drafted? You know, in the first round or whatever. And that's what I've thought about. Just you have to be open-minded when it comes to recruiting, but it's hard to do that because if you bring a guy in to develop, if you develop him and don't play him, he's gone.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so you take what coach has done, and I think is smart, is sort of taking a half in, half out approach, is that we're going to be 60% high school and probably 40% portal guys. And the portal guys, the right portal guys can make all the difference in the world. Sure. You know, I've seen them come in there, and some of them are great and some of them aren't. But the great ones, sometimes you have a chance if you get the right guys. And in the maturity and the fact they've been at it, it's hard for those young guys to just come in and play fast.
But you're going to think about this one.
Okay.
If you had to sit down and have a Last Supper with 5 people, who would it be?
I've thought about that. A lot. Honestly, I don't know why. Maybe because I'm old. I know Vince Lombardi would be one. And I don't want to be so narrow-minded that I only pick football coaches, but really that's sort of, when I ask myself that question, I always come up with football coaches. But, you know, Vince Lombardi would be one. I think Bill Walsh would be one for sure. And then...
We'll just make it football coaches so we don't hurt anybody's feelings. How
Okay.
about that? There you go.
It'd be Bill Walsh, Vince Lombardi. Good gosh. If I'm going to get to pick, I'm going to bring Milt Tenniper because I love Milt to death. He passed several years ago. He was so good to us. One of my heroes, even though he was from Nebraska. But he would be one because I got to have an O-line guy in there. And then, Bud Wilkinson, just because I'm an Oklahoma guy and I would like to do that. And probably Frank Broyles, maybe. I think he'd probably be in there too because he just had such a unique background, being the Georgia guy. And he said something. We were at it. I was speaking at the Arkansas clinic. I think the second year we were at Greenwood, and I was feeling all pouty about a deal that had occurred where I didn't get something I thought I was going to get, and I was all feeling bad and feeling sorry for myself. And I gave an hour-long talk there at the clinic, and I'm fired up, and I'm spitting and going and waving and jumping. And I sat down and I thought, that's one of the greatest clinic talks ever. I said, I killed that. Coach Broyles is the guy after me.
Oh, gosh. Oh.
And he spoke for 10 minutes. And he said, and I'm feeling all bad about myself, and he said, I never let the people of Arkansas forget how lucky I was to be their coach.
Wow.
And I thought, slap, punch in the gut. It's so true, Jeff.
Yeah. Oh,
it's
yeah.
so true. And I've thought about that so many times. And I went back home and I thought to myself, I'm going to make sure everybody in this stinking town knows how proud I am to be their coach. And that's exactly the way he said it. I've never forgot it. He spoke for about 10 minutes. Said more than 10 minutes than I could have said in 10 days. But that was so meaningful. When you're the football coach, and you wonder, why do people love Frank Broyles? That's why.
Yeah.
Because he never let the people of Arkansas forget how lucky he was to be their coach. Pretty good stuff.
Very good stuff.
That's dangerous stuff.
Well, Coach, Bray's got something here to give to you. You drove all this way. We want to feed
All
you
right.
too,
Our people at the All-American Steakhouse down in Springdale.
Okay.
I got a $100 gift card for you to go enjoy a little dinner.
Wow.
I would recommend. I'd recommend the porterhouse and the crab dip.
Crab
Okay.
dip. The crab dip is really good.
All right.
Yeah, me and
That's
Bray,
awesome.
I ate so much in there the other day I couldn't even walk out.
It's just tough.
That's good. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank
I
you
enjoyed it.
coming on.
Look, Coach, we appreciate you coming on,
You bet.
and I love talking to you. I've always, if I ever had an issue, I called Coach or this or that, and true ball coach.
I like
ball
talking.
coach.
I do like talking ball now.
No,
I have
me
to
too.
admit, I apologize. I just seem to go off on rants because
That's
I get fired up, start talking about those fourth down situations.
Yes.
That's the way we live our life. Well, Coach, we appreciate you coming on, man. We'll probably have you on again. You're a you're a big fan of the show. We have you on all the time, and we'll get you back.
I'm
on.
ready. I would say this: if anybody's interested, Rick.Jones at Missouri.edu. My cell's 479-650-9950. Call me, text me, email me. I'm here to help. That's what they want me to do.
Well, you've always been a big help to us, and me especially. Well, Coach, appreciate you coming
You
on.
bet.
Well, for Coach Jeff Williams, Coach Bray Cook, the Mouth Brent Bender, we'll see you next time.